Mrs. Evans, please escape right away. The concierge suddenly said that to me. What do you mean? Ma'am, listen. As she revealed the truth to me, a chill ran up my spine. And immediately, I flee back to my parents' house. Wait, why did you suddenly disappear? I retorted against my mother-in-law's furious voice over the phone. I won't be fooled. I won't be manipulated by you. My name is Katie, 35 years old. I work at a telecommunications company, and I hold a managerial position. I have a responsible job, so I'm busy every day. There are challenging aspects, but I find it very rewarding. And I believe that one of the reasons I can work hard is because my personal life is fulfilling. I've been dating a man named Brian for about 3 years. We met on a dating app. We had many common interests, so I replied to his message. We exchanged messages several times and decided to meet in person. He was more refreshing and handsome than his pictures. And when we met and talked, it was very enjoyable. He was funny. After that, we started meeting each other and became a couple. Brian was very kind and considerate. We're currently living together, and he cooks for me every day. When I come home late from work, he prepares meals for me. His cooking is delicious, and it always makes me feel happy. Delicious. Thanks, Brian. Your cooking heals me. Really? I'm glad you say that. I'll do my best with housework so you can focus on your job. Thanks to him, I can lead a very healthy lifestyle. Lately, there are many couples where the woman is working hard. Personally, I've been thinking about marrying him someday. And just recently, he told me that he has something important to discuss. Brian? What's going on? This place... Isn't this where we had our first date? At that moment, I was taken aback. Could it be? Nervously, I waited for his next move. Brian seemed incredibly nervous. There's no doubt. This must be a marriage proposal. Thinking that, he took our ring from his pocket and started to speak. I want to stay by your side. So, Katie, please marry me? I was overjoyed by his proposal. The answer was, of course, yes. I said yes on the spot, and we decided to get married. I was incredibly happy to marry the man I love. My colleagues at work and my parents were also delighted. My parents seemed relieved that their daughter finally got married. Afterwards, we introduced ourselves to each other's parents and had a formal meeting between our families. His parents were very kind and treated me well from the first meeting. Katie, feel free to talk to us about anything. We'll do our best to help the wedding preparations too. Thank you very much. I'm excited. And Brian and I were able to have the wedding of our dreams. Many people attended, and it was the best feeling ever. Then our married life began. Just like before, with my busy work schedule, my husband takes care of the household chores, which is a great help. He keeps improving his cooking skills. The food he makes, which was already delicious, become even more tasty. Yum! You're a genius, Brian. Right? It's one of my masterpieces. My husband seemed to enjoy cooking and always prepares various meals for me. I feel bad leaving all the household chores to him, so on weekends, I'll do the cleaning and laundry to maintain a balanced life. The time flew by, and before I knew it, 2 years had passed. I am grateful that I was promoted again and became the head of the department. Katie, you're really amazing. It's all thanks to you for always helping me at home. I see. I'm glad I can be of help. I truly believe we are a well-balanced couple. I thought we could continue to live a happy life together from now on. Amidst that, my husband approached me with a serious expression, saying he wanted to discuss something. What's the matter? Well, it seems like my dad injured his back. My parents said it's getting tough without some support. Oh, that's concerning? Yeah. So, Katie, I'm thinking about moving in with my parents. Huh? I mean, taking care of my dad alone seemed to be too much for my mom. I was taken aback by his words. But I just got promoted. And to be honest, I didn't want to quit my job or make any compromises. Then, my husband said something unexpected. Don't worry about that. I'll quit my job and help take care of my dad and assist with household chores. Huh? Really? Yeah. So you just focus on your work, Katie, and don't worry about anything else. I thought about it for a moment. But if my husband is willing to take care of everything, then maybe it's okay. My in-laws' house is close to my workplace. If we live together, we won't have to pay rent anymore. When I considered these factors, it seemed like the benefits outweighed the drawbacks. I understand. Let's move. For all of us. Really? Thank you, Katie. My husband was really happy. Seeing him smile like that, I felt glad that we decided to live together with his parents. Katie, thank you for moving in with us. We're happy to have you. Likewise, I'm happy to be here. Well, I thought I was still in good health, but I can't let my guard down, huh? Please don't overexert yourself, da. Thank you, dear. My in-laws warmly welcomed us. And so, our life together began. My husband made it possible for me to not have to worry about household chores. My in-laws were kind and never said anything, even when I focused solely on my work. In fact, they're curious about my work and supported me. I felt incredibly fortunate to have such a great husband and in-laws. So I decided to increase the amount of money I contribute every month. Wanted to give them a better experience. Oh, Katie, is it okay if we accept this much? Yes, I'm always grateful to you. Wow, it's a big help. We were thinking that it would be difficult to get by with just our pensions each month. Oh, Katie, we're really glad you became our daughter-in-law. I was happy to hear those words from my in-laws. In reality, I'm already 35 years old and I haven't had children yet. Even though it's only been 2 years since I got married, considering my age, I think it's barely possible for me to have children. So I'm grateful to my in-laws for treating me kindly without bullying me in that situation. I'm also grateful to my husband, who takes care of household chores. We were living a happy life together like that. However, after about 3 months, I started to feel a slight discomfort or change. Katie, can I talk to you about something? Yes. What's wrong? Can you increase the amount of money you put in every month? Huh. According to my mother-in-law, they are running short on living expenses. What are you spending the money on? Actually, our pensions are less than you think. We're in a tight situation. Huh. I didn't know that. I couldn't bring myself to say it until now. You've done so much already, and I didn't want to cause you any more trouble. I didn't know that my in-laws were in such a difficult situation, and I regretted that I had been so indifferent and focused only on work. I'm sorry, I've been too careless all this time. Oh no, that's not true. Thanks to you, we've been able to get by. I reflected on my actions and increased the amount of money I contributed to the household even more. The amount I chose may have been a little too much, but I thought it would make their lives much easier. And both my in-laws and my husband became even happier. I'm glad you are my wife. It made me very happy to hear that from my husband. Feeling needed by someone is a source of happiness. And in the midst of that, my mother-in-law's birthday was approaching. What should we do for her birthday this year? When I asked my husband that, he said, well, this is a resort she's familiar with. She wants to stay there. Really? It seems like she wants us to go there with her. From my husband's tone, it seemed like my mother-in-law was a regular customer. When I asked my husband, I haven't really asked her for details, but I think that's the idea. I see. But it's your mother's birthday, so I feel bad making her do everything herself. You don't have to worry about that. My mom is the type who wants to do all the reservations herself. I see. Then it's better to let her do it the way she likes. At that time, I didn't really think much of it. I never imagined that they were planning something like that. And a little while later, the day of my mother-in-law's birthday arrived. We drove to the resort she had mentioned. When we arrived, it was a very luxurious and upscale resort. It's so luxurious and amazing. I've never been to such a fancy place before. Everyone was very excited. Huh? Wait a minute. Did my mother-in-law come here a few times before? I noticed that she seemed surprised, as if it were her first time here. At that moment, I received a call on my smartphone from one of my staff at work. I had taken a payday off today, so I wondered if something had gone wrong. I told my husband that I needed to take the call and went to the lobby. As I suspected, there was a problem at work, so I spent some time on the phone discussing it. My husband and in-laws were already taken to their room. After about 20 minutes of talking on the phone, I decided to leave the rest to my team. Today, I wanted to prioritize my family over work. When I finished the call and went to the reception desk, the concierge guided me. Without thinking, I followed behind. Outside, there was a beautiful garden that was meticulously maintained. Even though it was my mother-in-law's birthday celebration, I was happy to stay in such a nice resort after a long time. The concierge stopped, so I thought we had arrived in front of the room, and turned to face forward. But it seemed to be a back entrance or something. Excuse me? Mrs. Evans, please, escape immediately. Wait, what? I was startled when she suddenly said that to me. What do you mean? Ma'am, listen. And then the truth was revealed to me, and I was shocked. I quickly fled back to my parents' house. A few hours later, I arrived at my parents' home, having turned off my phone. There were probably a lot of missed calls and messages from my in-laws. After taking a moment to relax, I mustered up the courage to turn on my phone. As expected, there were numerous incoming calls like a flood. And just as I turned on the phone, a call came in, so I reluctantly answered it. Finally! Katie, where have you been? As soon as I answered the call, my mother-in-law started shouting. Where are you right now? Come back immediately! No, I can't come back. What? What do you mean? You don't intend to celebrate my birthday? That's awful. I retorted to my furious mother-in-law over the phone. I won't be fooled. I won't be manipulated by you. What do you mean? What are you talking about? You're trying to make me pay for the expensive accommodation, aren't you? Huh? That resort is quite high-end, right? And on top of that, the plan you chose is one level below the suite, right? Well, that's... So you were trying to make me pay for all that, right? Well, not that you're the breadwinner of the family. It's only natural for you to pay, right? Well, in that case, wouldn't it be normal to consult with me first? Why the hell did you keep it a secret? And also, the plan was to leave me behind when it came time to pay, right? Why do you know that? It seems that the resort staff happened to overhear your conversation in the room. Apparently, you were talking loudly and rudely with the door open. That woman is easy to manipulate. Just be a little kind to her, and she'll throw money at you. Ring any bells? It's just terrible the way you were talking about me. And And I'm sure you had enough money for your expenses from the beginning, right? Anyway, I can't trust you anymore. I won't return to the resort. We can't cancel it anymore. That means we'll have to pay for everything. Well, that's only natural, isn't it? No, we can't pay that much. My mother-in-law kept screaming over the phone. In the background, my husband and father-in-law were shouting something. But I didn't care and said it anyway. I'm getting a divorce, so please tell Brian. I said that and hung up the phone. The next day, the three of them came to my parents' house together. Hey, what the hell are you thinking? My father-in-law shouted as he stormed in. My husband and mother-in-law were standing behind, glaring at me and my parents. I hastily withdrew money and paid for it. Wow. Looks like you were in good shape, huh? Well, you see, this is just... Were you planning from the beginning to extort money from me and arrange for us to live together? And you faked your injury? The three of them were suddenly flustered. At that moment, my father stepped forward and delivered the final blow. You've been deceiving my daughter and taking money from her. It's a clear case of fraud. We should consult the police and lawyers and take appropriate action. Their faces turned pale at my father's words. If you don't like that, then leave right now. Upon hearing my father's words, the three of them hurriedly fled the scene. After that, I divorced Brian. I hired a competent lawyer, and I managed to get back a small portion of money I had been deceived into paying. They had extorted money from me, ordering expensive takeouts, and going shopping and enjoying themselves while I was away during the day. And in front of me, they pretended to live a modest life. I blame myself for being deceived, but I'm relieved that I didn't have to pay for the accommodation expenses this time. My ex-husband also quit his job, so their lives took a sudden turn for the worse, and they are now living in poverty. But they haven't been able to forget the days of luxury and have fallen into a vicious cycle of borrowing money and wasting it. Well, it's no longer my concern. On another day, I went to thank the resort concierge, who sensed the danger and let me escape. As a gesture of gratitude, I decided to stay at the resort with my parents. The resort was truly amazing, with top-notch service and cuisine. While some family members may betray you, there are also strangers who can empathize with your situation and act accordingly. As we said our goodbyes, the concierge gave me a warm smile. Mrs. Foster, I'll be waiting for you again. I will never forget that smile. From now on, I've made up my mind to work diligently and honestly. What's going on, Mariah? I've been giving you $1,000 every month. Haven't you been sending it to my mom? Where on earth is the money going? I calmly responded to my husband, whose face turned red. Honey, have you looked into your mother's room? My name is Mariah, a 38-year-old housewife. It has been 5 years since I married my husband Paul. I used to work as an office employee, but I quit my job when I got married. And now I live a life centered around housework while working part-time. Since I had always lived with my parents, to be honest, I wasn't good at housework, but now I've become skilled at it. I had helped my mother with cooking, so even from the beginning of our marriage, my husband would compliment me on my delicious cooking. Recently, I started working part-time at a fancy cafe. Surprisingly, the part-time job is enjoyable, and I spend fulfilling days every day. I learned how to make delicious coffee and got recipes for simple sweets that I can make it at home from a pastry chef at the cafe. On our days off, I enjoy hosting a home cafe for my husband. This cake is so fluffy and delicious. Right? Actually, I made it in the microwave. Whoa, that's amazing. This coffee is also great. I made it with coffee beans sold at the cafe where I work. It has a strong bitterness, which goes perfectly with the roll cake. Make it again sometime. Of course. My husband has a sweet tooth, so he's always delighted when I make sweets. The little moments on weekends become more elegant, and my experience working at a cafe is greatly appreciated. I intend to further pursue my hobbies of coffee and pastry making. That's how we, as a happily married couple, spend our happy days together. However, during that time, a very sad event occurred. Dad collapsed? On a day off, my husband received a call and we hurriedly went to the hospital. Dad, are you okay? Oh, sorry. It seems a serious condition has developed. It looks like I'll have to stay in the hospital for a while. After my father-in-law fell asleep, we moved to my in-law's house and spoke with my mother-in-law. Mom, are you going to be okay on your own? Yes, for the time being. But it seems the hospitalization expenses and further medical costs for your father will be quite high. I see. That's true. My father-in-law was suffering from a serious illness. My husband and I felt sorry for my mother-in-law. I'm thinking of sending money to Mom. What do you think? Yeah, I think it's a good idea. I'm worried about your mom, and I think she'll have a hard time living alone. Especially in time like this, we should support her. Thank you, hon. After that, we started sending money to my mother-in-law. Are you sure about this? Yeah, please take it. Thanks to Mom and Dad, I was able to go to university. That's how we started sending her $1,000 every month. Since my husband was busy with work, I made the transfers to my mother-in-law's account during the day. That even a little bit of financial support would make a difference for my in-laws. A few months passed since we started sending money. My father-in-law's condition didn't improve much. When we visited him, he put on a brave face, but it seemed like he was actually going through a lot of pain. My mother-in-law was deeply worried, seeing her partner growing weaker day by day. My husband and I also felt saddened by this situation. We wished for a miracle, that my father-in-law's illness would be cured. However, our wishes were in vain. About 9 months after his hospitalization, my father-in-law's condition worsened and he passed away. My mother-in-law was devastated, having lost her beloved husband. Both my husband and I mourned the loss of our kind father. While watching my grieving mother-in-law break down in tears, my husband and I immediately started arranging and preparing for the funeral. 2 days later, we successfully held the funeral, but my father-in-law was no longer with us. That fact left a gaping hole in our hearts as a family. I wonder if Dad is resting peacefully in heaven. He was always a busy and active person, so imagine he's still saying things like, "There are only 24 hours in a day," and making himself busy, even in heaven. While reminiscing about my father-in-law, we gradually regained our energy and spirits. However, even after nearly 3 months, it seems that my mother-in-law was still overwhelmed by the sadness of losing her husband for several decades. Even when we visited her from time to time, she seemed to lack her usual vitality. Mom, are you okay? I'm sorry for causing you worries. If there's anything we can do, please let us know. Thank you. Well, there's one favor I'd like to ask. What is it? Could you continue the financial support like before? Life has been quite difficult, as the medical expenses for your father's treatment were more than anticipated. Was it tough even with the support we provided? Your father had a serious illness, so it was quite challenging. Actually, we were barely getting by. I didn't realize. Of course, I don't mind. What about you, Mariah? Yeah, it's fine. I thought it would be good if it could help my mother-in-law regain some of her strength. From that point on, I continued to transfer money to my mother-in-law's account every month, as usual. My husband works for a large company and was rapidly advancing in his career, so our income is more than enough. In addition, I was working part-time, so we had a comfortable life. After about 6 months since we resumed the financial support for my mother-in-law, my husband asked me something with a serious expression.
Mariah, are you still sending money to Mom?
Huh? I was surprised by my husband's sudden question. Of course I am. Why are you asking?
Mom said she's still struggling with her finances. She also mentioned that the transfers are coming in late.
I would always transfer the money to my mother-in-law's account as soon as my husband gave it to me. I'm definitely sending the money on time. I transfer in the morning after you give it to me.
I see. Okay. I understand.
Feeling a bit uneasy, I contacted my mother-in-law and arranged to visit her next week. Hi, how are you?
Mariah, it's nice of you to come. I'm sorry, but I don't have any tea. Would water be okay?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Please, have a seat.
Saying so, my mother-in-law filled a glass with tap water and placed it in front of me.
We happened to run out of tea, you know?
Could it be that she's facing financial difficulties with even buying tea? I glanced around the living room and felt a slight sense of something being off. Wait, wasn't there a sofa there?
Oh, I sold that.
Huh?
I thought it could help a bit with my finances. Well, it didn't amount too much though.
Looking around, I noticed that other items of furniture and decorations were missing from the living room. It seemed that my mother-in-law was selling things from the house for money. And my mother-in-law appeared to be thin and gaunt. Are you eating properly?
Oh, I'm fine.
When I asked about her menu, it became apparent that my mother-in-law's diet was quite meager. What are you having for dinner today?
Just vegetable soup.
Just that?
I have to cut back to make ends meet.
That's... Upon realizing how much my mother-in-law was struggling, I was speechless. Excuse me, I need to use the restroom. To calm myself down, I decided to go to the restroom. That's when I noticed that my mother-in-law's room was slightly ajar. In a quick glance inside the room, I made a shocking discovery. There, I saw an expensive limited edition bag from a luxury brand. Back when I was working, I used to buy luxury goods often, so I could instantly recognize the value of the bag and other items of clothing. But why would my mother-in-law, who had been claiming to be poor and struggling moments ago, have such an expensive bag? With questions lingering in my mind, I went to the restroom. When I returned from the restroom, my mother-in-law was preparing the soup.
Maybe you should go back soon?
Yes, I'll come back again. In the end, I had no choice but to leave as my mother-in-law suggested. But I couldn't shake off the thoughts about the luxury bag. Because of that, I decided to visit my mother-in-law again on another day, this time with my husband. Knowing that my mother-in-law was going through a tough time, I proposed to my husband that we buy ingredients and have a barbecue party at her house. My husband agreed, and we headed to my in-law's house right away.
Mom, we bought lots of ingredients. Let's have a barbecue party.
Well, that's delightful.
Thank you both.
My mother-in-law seemed very happy. However, I was carefully observing her actions. I had prepared plenty of alcohol. If possible, I wanted to get my mother-in-law drunk and make her fall asleep. And today, I had arranged for me to drive back home, so I gave permission to my husband to drink as well. My husband enjoys alcohol, so with the combination of barbecue and drinks, he would surely indulge in them. As planned, my mother-in-law and husband were enjoying the barbecue and alcohol with great delight. Once they were full and had consumed a lot of alcohol, they said they couldn't eat anymore and started to look sleepy at the dining table. While I was cleaning up, the two of them drifted off to sleep. Taking advantage of that opportunity, I turned on the lights in my mother-in-law's room and found the luxury bag I had seen before. Indeed, it was quite expensive. Feeling guilty, but wanted to confirm the truth, I opened her closet. And there, as expected, there were numerous high-end bags and branded clothes. When you add up the total value, it would amount to a substantial sum. Moreover, there was a jewelry box in the closet. When I opened it, there were many rings, all of them high-end. There were even recently released new clothing items. This meant that these were not old items, but ones she had bought recently. At that moment, I became certain. My mother-in-law was using the allowance we sent her for buying luxury goods. And yet, she had the audacity to say that she didn't have enough money and that her life was difficult. I was filled with anger. So, I decided to stop sending money to my mother-in-law. To ensure that she wouldn't notice I had been in her room, I put everything back in its place and returned to the living room. After that, I woke up my husband and we went back to our house. Even when we were leaving, my mother-in-law intentionally said, "It was such a long time since I had something this delicious. I'm so happy." While thinking that she could have a normal life if she stopped buying luxury goods, I drove the car. For the next 3 months, I stopped sending money to her. Then one day, my husband came back from work with a stern face and confronted me. "Hey, what's going on? Aren't you sending money to my mom every month? She contacted me. Where on earth is the money?" Facing my husband, who had turned red with anger, I calmly responded, "Have you seen your mom's room?" "Huh? Room? I haven't seen it. What about it?" "I found a large amount of luxury goods in her room the other day." I said that and showed the photo I had taken with my phone to my husband. I had taken pictures of my mother-in-law's room that day. Honestly, he felt uncomfortable doing something like that without permission, but I wanted to know how the allowance was being used. So I investigated. As I said that and showed him the photo, my husband's face turned paler and paler. "So you're saying that she bought all this with the money we send?" "That's what it seems like. Maybe she's pretending to be poor. But actually, her life isn't difficult at all." "This is unbelievable." Paul had a face that expressed his disbelief. But seeing is believing. We decided to visit my in-laws' house unannounced. My husband and I drove there, and he used the key he had to enter the house. When we entered the living room, my mother-in-law was in the middle of a meal. "Paul? What's wrong?" Glancing at the dining table, it was immediately apparent that my mother-in-law was living a normal, if not luxurious, lifestyle. "Mom, is life really difficult for you?" Well, these were given to me by the neighbors." "Don't try to cover it up like that." Saying that, my husband headed towards my mother-in-law's room. "Oh, what's going on?" She tried to stop my husband in a panic, but it was already too late. My husband opened the closet and stared at my mother-in-law. "What are all these branded items?" Those are the things I had from a long time ago." "Lies won't work. These are new releases, right?" "So that means you've been using your allowance to buy luxury goods?" Well, my mother-in-law was visibly shaken as the truth was revealed. "Mom, we were worried because you were so devastated after losing Dad. That's why we kept sending you money. So why would you betray us like this?"
Paul. I'm sorry. Once I started buying, I couldn't stop.
While saying that, my mother-in-law broke down in tears. According to the story, my mother-in-law had been ecstatic since my father-in-law was hospitalized. It seems that she found it unbearable to spend the whole day with my father-in-law after he retired. Amidst that, my father-in-law fell seriously ill, giving my mother-in-law the freedom to be alone at home, and she went wild. Living a life going out whenever she liked, buying whatever she wanted, and eating whatever she wanted. The money quickly disappeared. That's when she came up with the idea of lying to us about the medical expenses, being difficult and receiving an allowance from us. Furthermore, it seems that my father-in-law had been paying for his hospitalization and medical expenses from his savings. In other words, it seems our allowance wasn't necessary. My mother-in-law had planned to indulge in luxury at least until my father-in-law's hospitalization ended, but it wasn't easy to break the ingrained habit of overspending. Therefore, it seems she decided to continue receiving the allowance from us, even after my father-in-law passed away. And in order to get more money from us, she pretended to live a poor life in front of us. When I mentioned that I would go check on my mother-in-law, it seems she deliberately prepared by skipping meals and making herself appear worn out from days before. Knowing that she had gone to such lengths to extort money, my husband and I were dumbfounded.
I'm sorry. Please forgive me.
My mother-in-law said that while prostrating herself on the ground. But the shock of being betrayed was too great for us to forgive.
I can't forgive you, Mom. I won't give you any money anymore. And I'm cutting off the ties between us. Please, I beg you. If you abandon me, I can't go on living.
Just stop buying branded goods.
That's all you have to do. You can live on your pension. Anyway, we won't have anything to do with you anymore.
Saying that, my husband took my hand and we left. We ignored the numerous calls and messages from my mother-in-law, and we secretly moved to another city without her knowing. A few months later, my husband and I happened to pass by the vicinity, so we decided to drive by my in-laws' house for the first time in a long while. Of course, we only intended to look at it from the outside. To our surprise, we found that the house had been sold. Surely, my mother-in-law must have continued her spending habits and accumulated more debt. With a sense of sadness, my husband and I drove back home. Since then, we haven't had any contact with my mother-in-law. It has been 2 years since then. This year, I gave birth to a daughter, but I don't think we will introduce our child to my mother-in-law. At least for now. That's how we feel. We intended to live happily, cherishing this family.
So I want you guys to leave this house. My jaw drops in disbelief as my mother-in-law smiles sweetly. My in-laws are trying to kick my husband and me out and have their beloved youngest son and his wife move in with them. This is a house that we worked hard to build. There's no way I can let go of it for such a ridiculous reason. As I clenched my fist in anger, suddenly a woman's voice interjected into the conversation. Oh, there's no need for that. I couldn't believe my ears. Why is she here? Let's go back a few months. I, Jane, had been discussing our dream home with my husband Wayne almost every day. A charming house with a garden and a picket fence, like one from a fairy tale. It had been my dream since I was little, and I had been envisioning it ever since we got married. We had been diligently saving money to build our ideal home, and our savings were more than enough for the budget. It was just the two of us, but eventually, we would have kids. I wanted to have some enchantments like our secret playrooms throughout the house for them to enjoy. My daydreams were expanding. One day, my mother-in-law Anita called the home phone. Since Wayne was at work, I picked up the call. I heard the news, Jane. You are building your own house, right? She spoke as soon as I picked up the phone. I was a little taken aback, but I figured Wayne had told her and replied, yes. What kind of house are you planning to build? Our cottage style sounds lovely. She guessed my ideal vision, and my excitement grew. We indulged in discussions about our dream homes for a while. It was unexpected, but it was delightful to have such an enjoyable conversation with her. Hooray for our dream home! I chanted in my mind. To be honest, I found her a bit difficult. I never thought she was a bad person, but it was just that she was quite stingy. For example, when I visited her before, we went out to do some grocery shopping. She loved to talk, so we had a decently enjoyable conversation on the way. Things started to take a strange turn when we arrived at the supermarket. As I put groceries into the cart while looking at my shopping list, she kept interrupting. Jane, instead of these expensive vegetables, why not go for the pre-cut ones over here? The meat you put in the cart earlier. The stuff just started putting half-price stickers on them, so I will go exchange it. The yogurt isn't on sale here. I think it's on sale at the other supermarket this month, so let's buy it there. It may be considered housewife wisdom, but it became tiresome to be checked and inspected every item I put in the cart. I didn't want to argue or be rude since she wasn't saying anything wrong, so I swallowed my complaints and followed her instructions. Afterward, while we were queuing at the cash register, she suddenly looked up from her phone and grabbed my arm with a sense of urgency. When I asked what was wrong, she told me that tissues and toilet paper were on sale at the pharmacy a few blocks away. She had received a message from a neighbor. I will go there first, so can you help me carry the bags when we go back? But we've already done a lot of shopping and got quite a few bags. Then go back home once and then come out again. I will wait for you. She then dashed out of the supermarket without hearing my reply. Dumbfounded, I gave in to her enthusiasm and did as she said. Sometime later, she finished her shopping and was waiting for me at the cafe in front of the pharmacy. The seats on either side of her were piled high with tissues and toilet paper. A huge load to carry even across the street. In stark contrast, there was only one glass of water on the table. Surprisingly, she had only been drinking that while waiting for me. She told the waiter she would order something once I arrived. But it's okay now that you found me. Let's just leave. Aren't you going to order anything? When I asked in surprise, she laughed, saying that cafes were expensive. She had been waiting for me for at least 30 minutes. It seemed pretty rude to leave without ordering anything. I told her to order something as I would pay. Without any hesitation, she took the menu and pondered for a while before finally calling the waiter. I will have a coffee, please, and may I have an afternoon tea set? I looked at her in surprise, and she gave me a big grin in return. I've always wanted to try this. It's embarrassing for me to go to a cafe and eat it alone, you know. That wasn't the issue. Out of all things, she had to order the most expensive item in the cafe. If it were me, when someone treated me, I wouldn't have ordered anything more expensive than what the other person was having. If the other person only ordered a drink, wasn't it proper etiquette to also order just a drink? If she wanted to have a meal, she should have at least said something in advance. Thinking that, It would be embarrassing to protest in front of the waiter. I remained silent. In the end, even at the checkout, she cheerfully said her thanks, showing no sign of shame for what she had done. I later heard that she proudly showed the photos of her afternoon tea to the neighbors, bragging about it. That incident made me think she cares too much about appearances, but was stingy with money. I hope it's going to be a sturdy and beautiful house, Anita said on the phone. She hadn't brought up any money matters at that point. She probably didn't care, as long as it wasn't coming out of her pocket. Just as I was feeling a little relief, she suddenly made a proposal. Since you are already at it, let's make it a two-family house. What? I couldn't help, but I almost shrieked. She didn't seem to care about my reaction and continued babbling about the two-family house. It seemed like she had done some research beforehand. It was clear that she didn't just come up with the idea on a whim. Feeling uneasy, I said I would consult with Wayne and hung up before the conversation progressed. She kept repeating, "It's definitely the best idea," until the very end of the call. The following weeks were painful. Not only Anita, but even my father-in-law Steve started to intervene. They even barged into our house together. The main topic, of course, was about building a two-family house. Under their immense pressure, Wayne and I gave in and agreed with the condition that we split the cost. Once the new house was completed, we immediately started living together as a family of 4. Although we called it a two-family house, the shared space was limited to the garage and the yard, and our living spaces were supposed to be separate. However, Anita quickly started to invade our privacy, and before I knew it, she often came to watch TV in our living room. Taking advantage of that, Steve placed his large belongings, like his golf bag, on our side without permission. Gradually, the two of them began to monopolize the entire house. No matter how many times I expressed my distress, they simply dismissed it with "Don't be so rigid." What bothered me the most was that they never paid their share of the promised construction costs. When I asked about the money we were supposed to split, they claimed to have it ready but showed no sign of actually paying. Wayne and I ended up taking out a loan and covering the cost ourselves. This Sunday, we are having a party with the neighbors, so you two don't bother us, okay? We were told something like that so often. Anita invited the neighbors over for a home party almost every week. They acted as if there was no agreement to split the cost and did whatever they pleased. One day, I came home when Anita was seeing off the party guests and overheard her saying this. "We built this house, but it's too spacious for us. We let our son and his wife live here, but it's more enjoyable to have a lot of people over. It's our house, so feel free to come anytime." I couldn't believe my ears. How shameless she lied. She made it sound like they built the house and they were allowing us to live in it. Outraged, I immediately talked to Wayne about it. It seems he had reached his limit with his parents' arrogance as well, as he suggested setting up a proper place to talk. The next day, we courteously told Anita how we were being inconvenienced by the ongoing home parties. Our precious brand new home was being ruined. We wanted to resolve the situation amicably, but she gave no hoot about it. On the contrary, her overbearing behavior increased. She only engaged in activities like barbecues, which caused smoke to seep into the house. Not only that, but after the guests were gone, she just left everything in a mess. She made us do all the cleaning and tidying up. When Wayne and I were both mentally and physically exhausted, my in-laws came up with an idea to invite all the relatives. I asked if I could invite my parents. Then, Anita made a face as if she had bitten a bitter pill. No! We are already full house with our relatives. Your parents can come another time, okay? What did it mean that my parents weren't allowed to attend a family gathering? I felt suspicious and called my mom. Hi, Jane. What's going on? I was relieved to hear her voice, which I hadn't heard in a long time, and I told her everything. The refusal to let my parents attend the party, and making Wayne and me pay for the entire cost of the new house. She listened and cheered me up by saying that I had done my best despite the hardships. I couldn't help but cry at her sweet words. Don't worry so much. Everyone is coming, right? It's a special party, so enjoy it. Encouraged by her, despite my anxieties, I gathered my determination. The house was built by Wayne and me. I swore to protect it together with him. On the day of the party, I welcomed the relatives, feeling nostalgic since our wedding. Among them were Wayne's younger brother, Isaac, and his wife. I had only spoken to them a little, but Wayne had told me several times that his parents doted on Isaac. As soon as he appeared, my in-laws became very cheerful. I couldn't help but feel a sense of dissatisfaction with the difference in their attitude toward us. At the same time, I thought if they were in such a good mood, we would spend the day without a hitch. I was a little relieved by the arrival of Isaac and his wife. However, that hope was quickly shattered. Isaac, how have you been? I've been worried since we haven't heard from you for a while. Anita was attacked to him throughout the party. Steve was watching them from the side. They left all the chores to me and Wayne, and didn't even bother to move from their seats. And then, Anita suggested something outrageous. You know, why don't you move in with us?
We've been discussing it. We'll transfer the ownership of this house to you, so there will be no problem.
They were talking casually, and seems to be oblivious to what they were really saying. The relatives didn't seem surprised by their statements, as if they believed that the house belonged to my in-laws. Instead, they irresponsibly agreed, saying it was a great idea. Wait a minute! I couldn't bear it any longer, and interrupted them. The house was for 2 families. There were no vacant rooms. It was impossible for all of us to live together. In response to my outburst, Anita opened her mouth with a look of annoyance. So I want you guys to leave. I was speechless, and Wayne stepped forward to take my place. He argued that we had taken out all the loans ourselves and built the 2-family house at their demand.
We've fulfilled your wishes, but you've done nothing for us. On top of that, you're telling us to leave? How dare you guys?
It was rare for him to speak so directly, but I felt exactly the same way as him. I nodded in agreement several times beside him.
If this house belongs to you guys, then it's practically ours too. What's wrong with us living here?
You must have a lot of money to be able to build such a big house. So why don't you just build another one? You're older, so give it to your younger brother.
It's not that simple.
Wayne was also exasperated, with a strained expression in the sigh. The relatives who had been watching the exchange between us, perhaps sensing that we were being overwhelmed, began to make statements in support of my in-laws. Isaac and his wife, on the other hand, remained silent, seemingly avoiding any involvement. Occasionally, they exchanged troubled looks and giggled. If things had continued as they did, we would have ended up giving up our house, just like when we were pressured last time. I absolutely couldn't allow them to take our home in that way. No matter what we said, we were overwhelmed by the numbers. We were at a loss. You don't need to give the house up. I couldn't believe my ears when a woman's voice suddenly joined the conversation. I was confused about why she was there. When I turned around, my mom and dad were standing at the entrance to the room. To the astonishment of everyone, the two of them nodded instead of greeting them. Then, my mom walked towards me and smiled, saying, "Surprise!" I could feel my tears coming up from the relief and bit my lip as I nodded. They must have been worried after the call, so they came all the way. I finally understood what my mom meant by not worrying. It seems like everyone here doesn't know, but the ownership of this land belongs to my husband. This house is also ours. We don't want it transferred to someone without our consent. My mom declared with a resolution. Including my in-laws, the relatives looked surprised. It was a shock to those who weren't present at the contract signing. In the midst of the commotion among the relatives, my in-laws anxiously began shouting, claiming it was all a baseless lie. My dad approached them and shut them up in a low rumbling voice.
It can be easily proven by the registry. I suggest you refrain from making unfounded claims.
Blood drained from the in-laws' faces. They must have been freaking out inside. The relatives who had been observing were giving them disdained looks. I knew it was a lie. I was skeptical from the beginning. A well-known local figure is saying so. The whispers were coming not only from inside the room, but also from the hallway. I looked in that direction in puzzlement. There, neighbors were watching us. I assumed my parents had chosen them as witnesses. As a relative said, my dad was a well-known figure in the town and led a Bible study for adults and kids in the local church. My mom also knew many people through her volunteer activities, so she was trusted by the people around her. Their statements turned the table on us, and my in-laws were unable to make any excuses and fell silent. Thus, the party ended in our favor. A few days later, my in-laws, who were shamed in front of all the relatives and neighbors, tried to patch things up but failed miserably. In the end, they fled the house with their tails between their legs a few days later. My parents didn't just let them leave, but they also demanded a large cleaning fee, adding insult to injury. They said it was a punishment for being carried away in our new home, but it was probably done for our sake. I can't thank my parents enough. I recently heard that my in-laws are now living with Isaac and his wife. They rent a small apartment, much smaller than my house. It must be very tight for people to live there. After having their way all this time, I hope they will live modestly without causing Isaac trouble. In reality, I hear they are constantly arguing due to the stress of repayment. Wayne and I invited my parents to live in our immaculately cleaned house, and now we live a peaceful two-family life. Both of them are overjoyed to be able to live next to us. There is no benefit in showing off. I swear in my heart that from now on, I will live to share happiness with the people I care most about.